I am Dwayne Brown. Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition. A landmark vote in Los Angeles aimed at raising the minimum wage, and the group who want the next fight for 15 to land in San Diego.
Renting an apartment in San Diego County today cost about $250 more than it did last year. I'm Peggy Pico. Why more vacancies and new developments could be to blame. And Mexico's midterm elections are this weekend. How the election outcome could impact U.S.-Mexico relations.
3, 2, 1.
The man behind Heroes in a Half Shell helps launch a new comic art gallery in San Diego. See how a doodle or a sketch turns into something like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Hi, good evening. Thanks for joining us. New calls to raise wages for all workers as Los Angeles moves one step closer to approving a $15 minimum wage. Council members there voted 13-1 for the measure. A final vote will be held next week. Now, the law could affect hundreds of thousands of workers. Small business owners are sounding the alarm, saying they can't afford it. Los Angeles may soon join San Francisco and Seattle with $15 minimum wage laws. New York and St. Louis may follow in their footsteps. Today, a group met calling on San Diego to be next. KPBS video journalist Katie Shulov was there.
About 15 people gathered in front of the McDonald's on Tirasana Boulevard, holding signs like this one. As other cities raise minimum wages, the group hopes it will create a domino effect that reaches San Diego, bringing with it a $15 minimum wage and union representation. The city's current $9.75 minimum wage is set to reach $11.50 by 2017, but protesters say that is not enough to live on in San Diego. Kristen Aguirre is living paycheck to paycheck right now in her dad's house.
I have 4 daughters, so it's hard to actually live off what I make. They're always wanting things, new shoes, clothes, and it's just hard to buy them all of the things that they want and need when I only make $9 an hour.
She has a message for the CEO of Burger King, the fast food chain where she works.
$9 is unrealistic to live off of. If it's so easy to live off of $9, then why doesn't he do it?
The group is now on the way to Detroit, where they'll join 1,300 other fast food workers at a national convention to plan next steps for the Fight for 15 movement. Katie Shulov, KPBS News.
Baja California farm workers are getting a big raise, as much as 50% for some workers after a 3-month strike. But KPBS Fronteras reporter Jean Guerrero tells us not everyone is happy with the deal.
The workers wanted the equivalent of $13 a day, but that's not what they got after 6 hours of negotiations yesterday. Instead, the top wage will be just over $11 a day. The final agreement sets up a 3-tier system of wages. The biggest farms will pay the highest daily rate of $11.47. That's a 50% raise. The smallest farms will pay less than $10 a day. Last month, the Mexican government promised to make up any shortfall between what the growers would pay and the $13 wage the workers were demanding. At the time, a labor ministry official said it would be a last resort, and it didn't go into the final agreement. The Los Angeles Times reports the plan was found to be unlawful. Some of the workers were on strike for 3 months. There were some protests that turned violent, and a few times the strikers blocked the main highway between Tijuana and Ensenada. And there may be more trouble ahead. I talked with one labor leader who said he refused to sign the agreement, even though the rest of the strike leaders signed. He says he's going to reorganize with some of his companions and continue the fight. Jean Guerrero, KPBS News.
A big test for the president of Mexico this weekend as voters there head to the polls to elect a new Congress. The results may be a blow or a vote of confidence for the nation's leader. Peggy Pico takes a look at what's at stake for U.S.-Mexico relations.
Just like U.S. midterm elections, Mexico midterms are considered a referendum on the president's performance. Mexican President Enrique Peña Nieto took office in 2012 with big expectations, but his presidency has been tarnished by violence and corruption. Here with analysis is my guest, David Shirk, political science professor at the University of San Diego. And David, how will the outcome of this midterm election affect Mexico president and his PRI party?
Well, this is, as you said, it's an important moment in evaluating how the president has done his job over the last 3 years. He came in with big promises to reduce violence and to move the country forward with a series of political reforms. In some regard, he's been successful. Violence has gone down, though not as much as he promised. And he's enacted reforms in education, energy, and even the criminal justice system. So what voters have to say at the polls will say very much about where Mexico thinks what he's been able to do.
How good or how poor of a job he's done. Now, the run-up to these midterms has been violent. I understand that some candidates have been killed. Mexico continues, a lot of Mexicans continue to demand answers about the disappearance of the 43 students and their likely deaths last year. So how is the missing student incident impacting this election, or is it?
There's probably no single event in the last 3 years that has captured greater attention inside or outside of Mexico than the Ayotzinapa student massacre of September 2014. And it has created a stain on the presidency of Enrique Peña Nieto because of his slow and, many people believe, inept response, as well as those of others in his administration. So people gearing up for this election who are opposed to Peña Nieto have used Ayotzinapa as a way of criticizing his government, and it is certainly something that, that has worked against his party's prospects in the upcoming election.
Now, will the smaller parties in this race have much of an impact in this election?
Smaller parties, some smaller parties stand to lose their registration under new federal electoral regulations that Peña Nieto has introduced. But one party in particular, the leftist party known as Morena, the Movement for National Renovation, which was founded by the leftist, former leftist presidential candidate Andrés Manuel López Obrador, may very well triple or quadruple its representation in Congress in this election, stealing votes away from the traditional leftist party, the PRD of Mexico. And that will definitely reshape the electoral landscape of Mexico moving ahead to the 2018 presidential elections.
Now, all of Congress will be replaced in this midterm election.
All 500 members of the lower house, the Chamber of Deputies of Mexico, no senators are being elected in this election, so it's really half of the Congress that's being dealt with.
I see. So what's at stake here in these elections as far as U.S. and Mexico relations?
Well, certainly whatever happens in Mexico has an effect on us here in the United States. Whether or not Peña Nieto is able to continue to advance his reform agenda, whether or not he's able to continue to wage the war on drugs, as he has done for the last 3 years, is going to be very much in question in the aftermath of this election. If he gets a resounding support for his administration, then I think we'll see him move full steam ahead. If the election reduces his representation in Congress and really demonstrates a great deal of discontent among Mexicans, then it may be more difficult for him to move things forward in the next half.
In terms of voter turnout, what can we expect there? Do Mexicans tend to skip midterms like Americans do?
Yes. It's not as exciting when there's not a single candidate running for president for your party that you can sort of get excited about. Many Mexicans, like many U.S. citizens, don't know who their congressional representative is. And so there is likely to be less turnout this election than we saw in 2012 or that we'll see in 2018. But Mexicans actually vote more consistently in both midterm and presidential elections than we do here in the United States. So there might be something we could learn from them.
All right. Well, we look forward to seeing you on Monday with election results. David Shirk, thank you so much.
Sounds great. Thanks, Peggy. Thanks for having me.
Heading back to the campaign trail on Monday, Escondido Mayor Sam Abed is expected to announce that he'll run next year for County Supervisor Dave Roberts' seat. The mayor has not confirmed plans, but in a news release, Abed said the 3rd District deserved honest representation and the public's trust must be restored. Supervisor Roberts has been accused of misusing public funds, creating a hostile work environment, and having an inappropriate relationship with an employee. Of course, last week during an Evening Edition interview, Roberts denied all of the allegations. The California Senate approved a bill that would allow naturopathic physicians to take on some of the duties of primary care doctors. From our North County Bureau, health reporter Kenny Goldberg says medical groups are blasting the proposal.
Naturopathic doctors believe in self-healing and the use of so-called natural therapies. The Senate bill would allow them to prescribe certain prescription drugs and perform minor outpatient surgeries. The California Medical Association says naturopathic doctors have no business prescribing potentially dangerous drugs. What's more, the CMA says they haven't had the proper training or experience to perform minor surgeries. Supporters argue naturopathic doctors are trained as primary care providers and have clinical rotations as part of their education. The bill to expand their duties now moves on to the state assembly, where the CMA and other doctors groups will try to kill it. Kenny Goldberg, KPBS News.
West Nile virus in San Diego County is off to an early and aggressive start. So far, 29 dead birds have tested positive for the disease, compared to 1 or 2 cases last year at this time. Most of the dead birds were crows and ravens found in the East County. Vector Control says it's concerned because the virus usually peaks during summer months.
West Nile virus is a disease that actually transmits much better when the weather is very warm, because the incubation period in the mosquito shortens during the higher temperatures. So it means that we're getting a lot of birds now. It could only potentially get worse going into the summer when it's going to get hotter.
Last year, 11 people in the county were diagnosed with the disease. 2 died. One way to avoid contact is to eliminate standing water from around your home. That's where those mosquitoes breed. Bicyclists and business owners are at odds over the county's bike lane plans for University Avenue. About 30 bike riders rallied today before a Sandag meeting over how to construct part of a $40 million bike lane project. Hillcrest business owners say the plan will hurt parking. Bike riders say Sandag is ignoring some of the city's most dangerous roads.
Sandag's old plan took out about 90 parking spaces, a third of the parking spaces on University Avenue, and that's unacceptable. I mean, everybody knows that parking is tough in Uptown.
They're leaving out the most dangerous corridor in this project for concerns over some of those things that I think can be resolved with more community dialogue.
Now, this is part of a long-term regional bike system plan through the year 2050. Well, the cost to rent an apartment in San Diego County rose significantly last year. Peggy Pico finds out how more vacancies could be to blame.
Throughout the county, the average rent for an apartment is a little more than $1,500 a month, compared to last year's average of about $1,250 a month, says the latest San Diego County Apartment Association report. Joining me with what's pushing rental prices up are my guests, Executive Director of the SDCAA, Alan Pentico, and SDSU Real Estate Lecturer, Dana Kuhn. Now, Alan, the report found that countywide apartment rates have increased by about $250 since last year per month. So what are the average rental prices here?
Right now, it's about $974 for a studio, $1,301 for a one-bedroom, and about $1,600 for a two-bedroom.
Now, the rents have gone up, but at the same time, I understand from your report, vacancies have increased, and so have the number of newly built rentals. So this seems a little counterintuitive. So what's going on here?
One would think so, but what we're seeing is there's still a lot of pent-up demand. So you think about all those people who stayed living with their parents and moved back in with their parents or doubled up. They're now starting to re-enter the market. So we're starting to see rent growth that we haven't had in the last 5 years because of the recession, and new properties coming online, which is increasing the vacancy, but we still have a lot of people who are trying to get into rentals because they've been living with mom and dad.
Living with mom and dad during the recession. I see. Yeah. Now, Dina, how does it work that rent averages can increase so much over 1 year? Is this sort of an organic process, or is it the case where a developer says, oh, hey, I'm raising the price, and he can get that so everybody else follows suit?
There is no following anything except the market. There is no one project or one owner who can drive the market. There are many, many projects owned by more people than you can imagine, and there are no key owners or builders who can drive the market.
So what would you say? Would you agree with the same reasons as to why this has gone up by $250 a month?
Yes, I mean, the demand has been exceeding supply for years now. We have population growth of 35,000 a year, and at a 2.8 household size, that dictates 12,500 units every year. And we're building half that, multifamily and single family combined. So there is this shortfall of units.
How much, Dana, how many rental units would we need here in the region to slow this, the rental rate increases? Is there a percentage?
It has to basically double to keep up with the population dictated demand. There is somewhat perhaps an explanation for the dichotomy you referenced earlier, and that is if in the survey projects that are filling up are included, they may come in at 75% because they aren't full yet, but they will get full.
I see.
And so that could drive down the average if there are a whole bunch of new complexes being inserted into the data.
I see. And Ellen, at the same time all this is going on, local wage increases are not keeping up with the region's economic growth. So how much of the new developments are actually subsidized housing units?
There's a percentage, a small percentage. Most jurisdictions have a fee or a program where a developer can get incentivized to build more units if they include so many affordable or subsidized units, if you will. So it's a small percentage, not a whole lot. Biggest thing is when you talk about affordable, the best thing we could do for our region is just build more units. As Dana was saying, that we're way behind the demand. Birth rates alone, we're not even keeping with them, let alone people moving to the region.
I see. And Dana, I read in a recent UT article that the rental rates aren't at a level where it's hitting 50% of somebody's income. So is there wiggle room here? Can the rates still go up a little bit more?
Well, San Diego's ratio has always been higher than other places, and sometimes people call that the San Diego tax. You know, it's a price you pay for living here and enjoying this climate. But the idea that you can spend up to 50% of your income on housing is, I think, well, it's one that proved not to be true when the crash came. You know, people drove themselves to that level of housing as a percentage of their income, and that proved that unsustainable. So I don't think there is much room left. Something's going to have to change.
I see. And Ellen, how about predictions for the next 6 months here? Do you expect to see continued increases in rents here? And is there this tipping point? At what price level do we max out?
I think the ultimate price level is going to be dictated by two things: the supply and wages. If people can't afford to rent them, they're not going to rent them. So if the supply is there, it's not going to matter. But at the same time, having more supply come online will ease the pressures and I think keep it tethered. So we'll see. I mean, the thing that we said a year ago when we looked at this is all of this is tied to jobs. Our industry is completely tied to jobs. If someone doesn't have a wage, they can't pay a rent. So as much as we're seeing that we're having job growth, they're not strong jobs. They're not high-earning jobs. I think there was a Wall Street Journal article yesterday under the A-fold that said exactly that's the same thing we're experiencing across the nation. People who had jobs that made $18 an hour before the recession are doing the same thing for $9 or $10 now. So it's really those two factors that are going to drive it.
All right, well, I'll have to leave it there. Ellen Pintico and Dana Kuhn, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Peggy.
North County Transit spends big bucks on consultants, but is still in trouble over grants and contracts. San Diego got a green light for a road in Balboa Park no one may want anymore. And Mexico is coping with election protests, violence, and angry farm workers. Join me for the KPBS Roundtable tonight at 8:30.
He's racing for history. American Pharoah took a final gallop today before the Belmont Stakes in New York. He won the Kentucky Derby and the Preakness with a win at Belmont tomorrow. The 3-year-old colt would be the first to win the Triple Crown in 37 years. He won his first race at the Del Mar racetrack last September.
I just feel that, you know, this horse has come in here. It's a different vibe with him. He has a lot of followers, and it's a positive vibe. And he's, you know, he's shown he was a 2-year-old champion. He was like, you know, he's shown, you know, it takes a superior horse to do what he's done so far, and so he just needs to bring it one more time, and we're hoping that it just keeps going.
American Pharoah faces 7 rivals tomorrow. The last horse to win the Triple Crown was affirmed in 1978. Ice cream cones, hot dogs, Ferris wheels, all these things were first introduced to us at the fairgrounds, and San Diego's annual county fair kicks off tonight with a blast from the past. A statue of the county fair's legendary host, Don Diego, greets visitors at the entrance with a large replica of Balboa Park's famous California Tower and Dome. A fitting tribute to this year's theme and the event that put San Diego on the world map 100 years ago.
It's a fair to remember, a celebration of World's Fairs and Balboa Park. It's the first time in history that we've partnered with the city of San Diego. And this year we're celebrating, of course, the Panama Exposition.
San Diego Fair can trace its roots back to Balboa Park and the California Panama Exposition 100 years ago. The exhibit features photos and other items from the first World's Fair in London. Linda Zweig with the county fair is full of interesting facts.
Did you know that a lot of things were actually introduced at World's Fairs, like ice cream and mustard, Cracker Jacks, Cherry Coke, Jell-O, and the Ford Mustang?
I get hungry just coming to the fair. Check this out. We've got a triple-decker cheeseburger sandwiched between two glazed Krispy Kreme donuts. And for those of you watching your waistline, how about these slim fast, deep-fried, chewy chocolate crisp? With more than 110 carnival rides and tons of live entertainment, the county fair runs through July 5th, and Zweig says no one should have to pay full price to get in.
Again, the best pass ever, 25 days for $25. Get into the fair for $1 a day, every day of the fair. Also, there are discount tickets to be had at Albertsons, Vons, and online you can get discounts as well. And you can find plenty of those discounted passes at sdfair.com.
I'm Judy Woodruff. On the next News Hour, Mark Shields and David Brooks are here to analyze the week's news. That's Friday on the PBS News Hour.
The creative process behind comic books on display now at the new San Diego Comic Art Gallery. You can even see the sketches and Post-it notes that helped create the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. KPBS Arts reporter Beth Accomando introduces us to the man behind the heroes.
Shh, come with me. We're going to see a Komichi Libro artifact in his natural habitat. Shh. He's even drawing right now.
One of the things that I felt was important about having the studio space right in the middle of the gallery, it sort of sets up the environment where someone like me sits there and creates, and the turtles that I draw, the things that I do right here in this space become comic books, that become prints and original art that hangs on the walls.
What you see on the walls of the San Diego Comic Art Gallery is the evolution of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which Eastman co-created in 1984 with Peter Laird.
I did this sketch of a turtle, nunchuck strapped to his arms and a mask on, and gave it to Pete. He laughed, thought it was the silliest thing he ever saw. So he, of course, had to do a drawing to top my drawing. So I did a sketch of all four. So, well, what do we name them? Well, if it's an idea as absurd as Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Doug, Bob, Steve doesn't really work. And I just blurted out, how about after some of my favorite Renaissance painters?
I'm Leonardo.
I'm Michelangelo.
Donatello.
I'm Raphael. Yeah, all the good ones, and
He was like, that's it, we have to call him that.
Harry Katz curated the exhibit and was thrilled that Eastman kept just about everything relating to the turtles.
You can see where the turtles came from, where this sort of cultural phenomenon came from.
The original scraps of paper, the Post-it note, where it's like, Donatello's mask should be purple, or some of the story notes for the earliest comic books I wrote on yellow line paper. I didn't know how to type, and so you see my bad spelling and my handwriting.
A doodle, a sketch made in a living room turns into comic books, then graphic novels.
And you can see exactly how that creative process works through the exhibit at the gallery.
Yeah, they're going to see how comic books are made, and that's pretty exciting. Comic books were considered a low form of art, but when you actually see the original art, you see the intellect and the thought that goes into these things and how they're put together. I think it gives you a much better appreciation of how much they mean to us and how much effort goes into making really a popular and commercially viable book.
And IDW should know. It publishes the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle books. And the comic art gallery that opened last night has been a long-term project of the company's founder and CEO, Ted Adams.
So we started IDW in 1999, so we've been in San Diego for 16 years, and we've had great success here and been able to grow our business. We have over 50 employees now in the city of San Diego. And what we wanted to do is be able to give back to that community. And we really thought that since San Diego is so identified with comics because of Comic-Con, that there was a chance here to essentially have a little bit of a Comic-Con year-round. And what we're trying to do is educate people about the art of comic books, how they're made.
When people look at the amount of work that goes into a comic story, you know, it's an amazing amount of intensive work.
There's a comic book writer who sat down and wrote a script, and there was a comic book penciler who sat down and penciled it out, and an inker who finished that pencil illustration, a colorist who came in and did their work, and a letterer who came in and put the word balloons on, an editor who put it all together, a publisher who brought it to the market. I think those are really interesting things for the public to learn more about, and they can do that here at the San Diego Comic Art Gallery.
They can also enjoy the lending library and discover who the fifth turtle was.
Yeah, she was created specifically for the next Turtles: The Next Mutation, a live-action TV series.
It's all at the San Diego Comic Art Gallery at Liberty Station. Beth Accomando, KPBS News.
San Diego Comic Art Gallery is free and open to the public. The Kevin Eastman exhibit will run for the next 6 months. We are looking at a gradual warm-up as we head towards the weekend. Morning clouds along the coast, then partly cloudy later in the day. Temperatures in the 60s and 70s over the next few days. A mix of sun and clouds for the Inland Valley, and warmer 70s and 80s heading into Monday. Sunny in the mountains where things will actually heat up into the 80s by Sunday. And a hot weekend for the desert. Temperatures there in the triple digits. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. Have a good night and a great weekend.